This is a thing. And in fact, because you listen to this show, that there is something called the negativity bias, that our minds are wired to magnify the negative. So you're fighting against some of your own wiring, but you can take this to a whole terrible level, okay? If you're the kind of person that is constantly hyper-focused on the one person who hasn't texted you back, that's a problem. If you're the person who is chasing somebody that is not interested in you, that's a problem. And when you are so focused on what's not working, you know what happens? You miss the fact that there are so many things that are working. You miss the fact that there are a lot of people that are saying amazing things behind your back. It's not all people who are gossiping. There are a lot of people that say great things about you, but you don't let that in, do you? There are a lot of people that show up for you in your life and that love you, but you don't let that in, do you? No. You're complaining about the people that aren't inviting you here. That is an example of how you actively engage in a campaign of misery. You focus on that. You're intentional about that. You are so steely about it. You're right about it. You have shut off any other possibility in your life. The doors are not swinging in and out because you have got your sword. You are focused on what is wrong, and you are willing to fight to the death about this thing. Here's another example of how you focus on what's wrong. So when I was on the Today Show a couple days ago, they had these questions that people had submitted on video. And there was this one awesome woman who said that, Mel, it's my goal to spend 15 minutes a day and exercise as a mom, do some yoga, do something for myself, put myself first, 15 minutes a day. I got a young toddler, and here's the question. I've only been 50% effective. How can I be better at this? Let me just say something here. If you have a toddler and you're still able to find 15 minutes for yourself 50% of the time, that's amazing. Do not bash yourself for that. 50% positive is awesome. But when you are engaged in a campaign of misery, what do? You don't see the good. You don't see 50%, I'm doing it right, I'm going to call that thing out. No, you focus on the fact that I'm only doing 50%. That's a way that you're not letting the good flow in. How many times do you do that? How many times do you discount what you are doing? Yeah. I did great. I met my quota, but I didn't do this. Yeah. We've done all this great, stuff on our house, but we had to do it ourselves. That you don't allow the good in. So those are the three biggest ways that I was actively blocking happiness. And I want to summarize them again. That number one, you're not present. You are so closed off. You're so locked up in your mind. You're so worried about everything else and everyone else and worrying about this that you're not even present. And if you're not even present, of course, you can't let things in. Number two, that you pick up the sword. You are bracing for a fight. Everything is a fight. The customer service rep, the line that's moving too slowly, everything has to have a sword to it. Just drop it. That energy blows, and you don't have to go through your life like that. And the third way that you block happiness, I'm sure, is you're not focused on what's working. You are so focused on what's wrong, what's not working, that you're not allowing the good to flow in. Now that you're like, oh God, okay, yeah, I'm a miserable you-know-what, and now I don't know what to do because I've just listened to a podcast on happiness, and now I feel horrible. So thanks a lot, Mel Robbins, for making me realize that I am actively engaged in ruining my life and not allowing happiness in. Well, here's the good news. Now that you know that you're doing this, you can actually choose to do something different. And there are simple ways you can practice this. If I can go from being a miserable wench internally to a very happy, content person that is not hijacked by other people or the storms around me, you can too. So here are two things that I want you to do. First of all, visualize the swinging doors. This has helped me so much. I do this almost every day of my life. Notice your energy. Are you going through your day-to-day life and you are allowing the doors to swing in and out? Are you allowing the good to flow in? Because that was the hardest part for me, and I'm sure it is the hardest part for you. When something good happens, acknowledge it. Let the good come in. Second thing, when somebody gives you a compliment, don't brush it off. Look the person in the eyes and say thank you. When somebody says, do you need some help with that? Can I help you? Don't say no. That's your bank vault door shutting out happiness, not allowing it to flow into you. Let someone help you. I can give you an example. This is something I'm working on. I am so used to traveling that when I pull up to a hotel in my Uber and I jump out of the car and somebody is awesome outside of the hotel, it's like, hey, can I help you with your bag? I'm like, oh, no, I've dragged it all the way from Boston. I can get it. No, let them help you. Let it in. That's a way that you can practice this. And here's a third simple way that you can practice this. Do you tell people that you love them? Like, I'm not telling, like, hey, love you, bro. That's not what I'm talking about. The fact is, most people do not tell people that they love them. I am constantly shocked and sad by how many of you write in and say that your parents never told you that they love you. I mean, this is a big deal. It's just 3 words. And this is a way that you can be the swinging doors. You know, I was having this conversation with Oakley and one of his really good buddies, and his friend shared something really cool with Oakley. He basically said to Oak, you know, I wrote one of my college essays for the college applications about you. And Oakley was like, really? What was it about? He said, well, I wrote about the fact that you always tell me that you love me. Like every time we're hanging out as a group of friends, you just say, hey, you guys, I love you. I'll see you later. And you just do it. And it's had a real impact on me. And now we all do it as friends. And it made me realize how closed off everyone in my family is, that nobody actually says it. And so I've started doing it. Now, that's a small example of somebody who didn't even know that this was possible. He was around somebody who was freely letting that flow in and out. Lots of hugs. I love you all the time. When he's hanging up the phone, when he's saying goodbye at the end of school. And now guess what? This friend of his is now saying it to his family. And his brothers and sister and his parents are saying it back. It's an example of what I'm talking about and how much we all want it. And finally, the exercise. I want you to borrow this exercise that my friend Pete taught me. You know how I told you that he said, you know, Mel, the more successful you become, the more miserable you are. And I'm like, you're right, you're right, you're right. Well, this is what he told me to do. Because I was like, I don't know how to change it. I am miserable. I don't know what to do. So he said, luckily, I know what to do. Take out a piece of paper. And I want you to just go through a week in your life. And I want you to list out all of the things that happen during a typical week in your life where you feel friction. All of them. And by friction, I mean it's the energy of you're picking up the sword. You're bracing. You close off. You're just like, whether it's your bills or it's your health or your commute or feeling lonely, that you don't have a lot of friends and it really just makes you frustrated. Whatever in your life is causing friction. That's what I want you to write down. Don't worry, it gets good. For me, when I did this 3 years ago, absolutely everything that I wrote down had to do with the fact that I was never home. I was working too much. I was always on a plane. I hated my life. I didn't have any friends. Why? Because I was always on a plane. I miss Chris. Why? Because I was always on a plane. I didn't see Oakley as much or my daughters as much. Why? Because I was always traveling for work. And I'll tell you what else. I had a lot of excuses about it. But I can't, but this, but that, but the other thing. Again, the excuses and me like complaining about it is part of this campaign. And I'm going to get into that in just a minute. Now, if I were to do this exercise right now with you, you know what would be on the list? Probably all of the things that I gripe about related to menopause. I actually did a whole episode about this, bitching about how bloated I was. Remember the red pants episode? And just kind of feeling frustrated and there's nothing that I can do and these excuses about it and feeling closed off about it and feeling shut off about it, which what? Anything on that list that creates friction, what does that feel like? It feels like a freaking hurricane, doesn't it? It feels like you're like intense. It feels like you're out of control. It feels like every excuse in the book for why you can't change that thing. So list absolutely everything. It causes friction that you're the one that has to walk the dogs and you didn't even want the dogs. It was your family that wanted the dogs and now you got the dogs. So list it all out. And now I want you to lean into it. Why is this creating this agita inside you? Why is this the hurricane that is spinning inside you? What is this list about? And let me tell you why it is so important to write this down. It's so important because you and I stay so trapped up here in our heads. We are behind that bank vault door, closed off, thinking about all these things that are making us miserable. And here's the thing. You are not stuck with this list. When you write this list down, when you get this out of the bank vault, out of the hurricane of your mind and into the physical space, the real world, on a piece of paper, staring you in your face, now you can work on it. Let me tell you what's going to happen when you do this exercise. First of all, there's going to be a lot of stuff on it because there's a lot of stuff that you're complaining about that you don't even realize you're complaining about it. You just live with it. You sit with it in your head. But when you complain about something, you are actively engaged in your own campaign for misery. Period. You are fighting for it. When you sit there and go, oh, but I can't do this, but I'm stuck with this job, but my this will never change. But And why do we do this? I'll tell you why. Because it's easier to complain about something than to change it. It is easier to feel frustrated and disappointed and stay stuck in the cycle of misery because you're used to it. And here's the thing that you're going to realize when you get all of this down on paper and you say, this is the hurricane. This is the stuff that's stirring up stuff inside me. This is where I'm putting my energy. I put so much energy into keeping this alive and in place because I'm constantly explaining all the reasons why I can't do anything about it. I'm constantly talking to myself about it. This is what the campaign of misery is. And that's why I want it on paper. Because I'm here to tell you, you have way more power than you think you do. You can change absolutely anything on that list. Anything that you are willing to identify, that you are able to write down. If you are able to look in the mirror and go, you know what? I see that I have a sword in my hand. I see that I feel the friction in this area of my life and I fight with it. I have excuses around it. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to realize that anything that you put down on that list, you can make a decision to change it over the course of the next year. You are not stuck in a relationship or a marriage that does not work. You are not stuck in a job that makes you miserable. For my entrepreneurs and small business owners out there, you're not stuck with a business model or a business that is making you unhappy or that's not working. Here is the harsh truth. And this is what I had to say to myself. Mel, you are more committed to your excuses about why you can't do these things than you are about fixing it. And so if you're somebody that has on that list your weight or your health, I guarantee you, you have spent years telling yourself why it's never going to work for you, why you can't go to graduate school, why you can't get back out into the dating world, why you can't change your career now that you're in your 50s. It is complete and utter bullshit. And you have to start to own your participation in your own unhappiness, just like I did. Because the fact is this, you can change your life by making a choice to change it. Instead of staying locked in that bank vault of your mind, spinning yourself into a hurricane, do something different. Instead of waking up every single morning and complaining to yourself, making yourself feel wrong, oh, I drank too much again last night, choose to stop drinking. Like enough. Instead of complaining about how your friends are annoying you, choose to stop hanging out with people who are insecure or petty or small-minded. Instead of complaining about your way, do something about it. Instead of constantly focusing on what's wrong, start focusing on what's right. Instead of being up in your head, catch yourself. Come back down to where your feet are. Open up the vault and let your presence flow. Be here so you can start to let the good in because you're missing out on your life. And the more time you spend up in your head complaining about it or fighting against it or arguing for your excuses, the more miserable you're going to be. That is what the campaign of misery is. And whenever you feel that closeness rising up in you, drop the sword. Drop the sword. You don't need it right now. What you need to do is you need to visualize those swinging doors. You need to start spending your energy seeing what's going right, the 50% of it that's going in your direction, and then allow it to flow in. And in case no one else tells you, let me tell you that I believe in you and I love you. And I believe in your ability to be a happier you. So put down the damn sword and start letting the good in. Today, you and I are digging into the topic of happiness. The single biggest barrier to my happiness for Mel Robbins was me.